Everyone is so excited about how the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints bought the Kirtland Temple that no one is talking about the absolutely insane collection of artifacts and documents that were also included in this historic deal with the Community of Christ. Based on the digging I've been doing in the church's documents and on the Community of Christ website, this transaction is unlike anything I've seen in recent years. I don't think most people realize just how much of a sacrifice this was for the Community of Christ and how necessary it was for them. And this is going to have a huge impact on the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints too. There is so much to unpack here with all of the history between these two churches that this is going to reshape the future of both of these churches. So let's break down what the sale was, how much money was involved, what was included, what was very conspicuously not included, what this means for the Community of Christ moving forward, what this means for the Church of Jesus Christ, and also what we're all wondering, under any circumstances or scenarios, will the Kirtland Temple be dedicated and used as a fully functional Latter-day Saint temple? On March 5th, 2024, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints released a joint statement with the Community of Christ announcing that the responsibility and ownership for the Kirtland Temple, several historic buildings in Nauvoo, and various manuscripts and artifacts officially transferred from Community of Christ to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints for the sum of $192 million. They didn't itemize the price of each item, but rather they did combine it into an overall sale price. The most sensational item acquired in this recent sale by the church was obviously the Kirtland Temple. This is the first temple built in the Restoration, dedicated in 1836. It has a special place in the heart of all Latter-day Saints across the Restoration branches. And while the more formalized temple endowment was never performed here, Joseph Smith did conduct sacred rituals that kind of were precursors of the endowment, such as washings and anointings with his apostles. During the dedication of the temple, Jesus Christ himself appeared to Joseph Smith and Oliver Cowdery to bless and accept his temple. Then Old Testament prophets, such as Moses and Elijah, appeared and bestowed certain aspects of priesthood authority on Joseph and Oliver so that they could perform sacred ordinances, such as the sealing of individuals together into God's family. The reason the Church of Jesus Christ didn't already own the Kirtland Temple was because Latter-day Saints had to abandon it when they were forced out of Kirtland by mob violence and were never able to reclaim it after that. Many of the members of the church that stayed in Kirtland became part of the new organization, later known as the Reorganized Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, led by Joseph Smith's son, Joseph Smith III. This church eventually became the Community of Christ, and they pursued ownership of the Kirtland Temple for years until 1880, when a court recognized that the heirs of Joseph Smith were the ones who owned the title to the building. And then many years later, they secured ownership through a legal claim of continuous use. The Community of Christ have been the very committed and generous caretakers of the site ever since, running public tours of the building and operating an adjacent visitor center. The Kirtland Temple was not the coolest thing to come out of this transaction between the Community of Christ and the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, in my humble opinion. This purchase also included an arguably even more sacred site. The Red Brick Store is such a mundane title to give to one of the most sacred locations in the Restoration. Completed in 1841, this was the site where the Relief Society was first established and where the first temple endowment ceremony was held. Joseph Smith and his followers rearranged the upper story and separated sections with veils in order for participants to be able to experience this ritual drama of creation, fall, and atonement, and to make sacred covenants with God. This picture here is from a video we did at Doctrine and Covenants Central on the first temple endowment. And so this is actually a 3D model that we rendered, trying to lay out and visualize like what these different sections of rooms would look like to go from like creation to garden to terrestrial and celestial rooms. Super cool. Definitely check it out on the Doctrine and Covenants Central website. It's important to caveat though that this one actually isn't the original building. This is a reconstruction made in 1980. The original structure was demolished in 1890. The Joseph Smith translation materials was also part of this transaction with the church over the Kirtland Temple. And this is the core piece of Joseph Smith's revelatory material that the church did not own. This material encompasses all of the manuscripts related to Joseph Smith's translation of the Bible, including the Book of Moses, and it includes the 1828 Finney Bible that has all of Joseph Smith's annotations about this translation. Every time Latter-day Saints scholars needed to do research on the JST, we've done it in cooperation with the Community of Christ, and so it is huge that we just own this corpus of material out right now. As far as all of the documents we've now received from the Kirtland Temple transaction with the Community of Christ, I think the coolest one is this, personally. This is the characters document, which likely contains transcribed characters from the gold plates of the Book of Mormon. This particular document was likely written in the hand of John Whitmer around 1831 and likely does preserve the authentic characters from the plates. This piece has such a rich history behind it, so I'm probably most excited about this. But to learn more about the history of this document, you're going to want to watch my previous video I've done on this topic. The Smith family homestead was acquired, which was the first Nauvoo residence for Joseph and Emma Smith and their 4 children. They lived there from May 1839 to August 1843, at which point they moved into the Mansion House, which is one of the most elegant buildings in Nauvoo, which the Church of Jesus Christ now owns. It was the Smith family residence from August of 1843 all the way until Emma moved from there in 1871. So why was this sale made? Was this purchasing of the Kirtland Temple a hostile takeover? Was it financial extortion? So look, after digging through the documents and taking a peek under the hood of some of these financials, it doesn't sound like that was the case. This sale actually was Community of Christ's idea. They're the ones who approached the church several years ago to inquire about this possible sale, and they've kind of been the initiators of this negotiation. And the reason is because they needed funds. According to the Community of Christ website, they expressed this sale was necessary to invest in their future. A lot of churches are being negatively impacted by this difficult economy and increasing secularism in America. The Community of Christ has seen that membership and tithes have significantly decreased in recent years. This table shows that this past year, according to their records, they have less than 6,000 tithe payers. In 2025, the church was looking at pretty drastic ways to cut costs, including possibly laying off a third of their employees. And we've seen precedent for this. We've seen a pattern of the Community of Christ Church increasingly selling more of their assets to our church to help their financial situation. In 2012, the Community of Christ sold the church several properties, including the Hans Mill Massacre site and the Joseph and Emma Smith home in Kirtland. And then 5 years later, in 2017, the Community of Christ sold the printer's manuscript of the Book of Mormon to the Church of Jesus Christ for $35 million. Hopefully, this sale is going to substantially stabilize their financial situation. They're going to be wisely investing this influx of cash into the Temple Endowment, no pun intended, and the Worldwide Mission Endowment. They're hoping by investing in these funds at about a 3% spend rate, the investments will yield $5.8 million in annual income. This is substantial, but still only about 38% of the total budget of $15.4 million in 2024. There's a growing gap of expenditures and income. So the way I see it, this is not a hostile takeover. The relationship between the Community of Christ and the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has for a long time been very respectful, collaborative, and ongoing. This is evidenced by the fact that all of the items that we're acquiring are already included in the Joseph Smith papers. And this is because the Community of Christ has been extremely helpful and cooperative in letting our historians take pictures, scans, and study all of the documents in their archive. So let's talk about what this means for the church. The memes that have been exploding on the internet are hilarious and attest to how big news this is that the church has purchased the Kirtland Temple. But what are we going to do with it? What is the future moving forward? For decades, members have longed for the day when we could have the Kirtland Temple as part of our historical legacy, since we have such a deep commitment to temple ordinances and to the sacred revelatory experiences that happened there. And fun fact, after the martyrdom, this was also the location where the bodies of Joseph and Hiram were laid in state. The Nauvoo house was built based on instructions given in Doctrine and Covenants 124 to build a boarding house for visitors and newcomers to Nauvoo. Now, the slightly unfortunate thing is the ultimate vision for this house was never completed because of the more pressing urgency to finish the temple. Louis Bideman later kind of consolidated and repurposed this house. The bodies of Joseph Smith and Hiram were temporarily buried in this basement, and this was also the final home of Emma Smith in her lifetime. The church already owned the earliest collection of revelations that became known as the Book of Commandments, but it was missing 4 pages from this collection, which were owned by the Community of Christ. These 4 pages containing portions of D&C 64, 66, 65, 76, the big 3 Degrees of Glory one, 81, and 133, have now been purchased and included in this larger collection. Okay, this one is a tearjerker. We acquired 7 letters from Joseph Smith to Emma from 1832 all the way until his very last communication with his wife, imminently before the martyrdom. This final letter contains an emotional postscript from June 27th, 1844. Dear Emma, I'm very much resigned to my lot, knowing I am justified and have done the best that could be done. Give my love to the children. The church has also acquired the original portraits of Emma and Joseph by David Rogers in 1842. These are the only paintings made of them in their lifetimes. We're getting a door. This is the original door to Liberty Jail. And there are a lot of other significant artifacts as well, such as John Whitmer's History of the Church, a very rare Nauvoo Temple sunstone, and a couple of the moonstones. And there are additional historic homes and undeveloped land in Kirtland and Nauvoo as part of this transaction as well. What I found fascinating was what was not included in this purchase was the Smith family cemetery. Now, at first, that doesn't seem odd, but if you look at this map here, the purple is everything the church has now officially purchased, and then the Smith family cemetery is like the little red thing right there. So you've got this one site that's surrounded by an ocean of what now the church owns. According to church historian Elder McKay of the 70, this site had pre-existing circumstances that prevent it being sold at this time. So altogether, this is a lot of stuff. According to my friend Casey Griffiths from Church History Matters, this is almost everything they have on the Joseph Smith era. They have cleaned out shop in a single sale. Now, according to a special meeting had with the Church History Department, they did indicate the Community of Christ still has substantial historical and research material in their archives that we'll be collaborating with them on in the future, but it's still insane how big this move was. You'll definitely want to check out what Scott and Casey have said on this topic. They're way more knowledgeable on this stuff than me, and they just recently published a video on the Scripture Central YouTube channel going into their very candid reactions and their takes on this transaction. In the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, we still believe that Joseph Smith and Oliver Cowdery really did see Jesus Christ, and the Old Testament prophets Moses and Elijah really did appear and bestow priesthood authority on the church in this temple. This temple is so sacred, and so we're obviously over the moon to see this happen. But will we actually perform temple ordinances here? According to the Community of Christ FAQ page, there are no future plans to have the Kirtland Temple be a fully functional Latter-day Saint temple. It's part of the contractual agreement that they will keep the temple open as a public historic site. This contract only lasts for a period of 15 years, but beyond that, their website says that we have received confirmation of the intent of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints that they plan to continue to make these sites available to the public at no charge. This does make sense for a number of reasons. As much as I would love to see the ordinances of the restoration performed in a place where the sacred priesthood keys were restored, this is a shared sacred space. The Community of Christ has been so cooperative and obliging over the years to allow Latter-day Saint historians and representatives to visit, use, and worship this space that we want to make sure the Community of Christ is allowed the same opportunity after the transfer of ownership. Provisions have been made for the Community of Christ to have up to 6 exclusive special meetings or gatherings a year in these Kirtland or Nauvoo sites. I think the bottom line here is that we are extremely grateful to the Community of Christ. According to church historian Elder McKay, we couldn't have the Kirtland Temple without the Community of Christ. They've been amazing caretakers and stewards over the years as they've shared these sacred sites, and we have benefited from their friendship, their collaboration, their spirit of hospitality, and our mutual efforts to understand our history better and embrace our spiritual legacy. But I also don't think there's any reason Latter-day Saints shouldn't rejoice over this. This is wonderful. It's amazing. It is joyful. And I hope that we are celebrating as we honor the Community of Christ. We hope for their good future, and we're excited for our future moving forward. I love what Elder Bednar taught recently, that you cannot know the truth if you do not know the past, your history. According to DNC 93, truth is a knowledge of things as they are, as they were, and as they will be. So Latter-day Saints have a sacred obligation to focus in on that were and more fully understand our past, that we can embrace the truth. I am so excited that we now have possession of the Kirtland Temple, and it's insane that the church is moving so quickly to open up for public tours at the end of this month. And who knows, they probably will close down these sites eventually to do some renovation and historical restoration and preservation practices. But I love that they are going to be open for future public historic use. If you want to learn more about this historic deal between the Church of Jesus Christ and the Community of Christ, check out the Church Newsroom, where they have a special FAQ page that answers a lot of these questions.